Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Los Angeles-based jazz vocalist and composer Sara Gazarek. Originally from Seattle, Washington, she talked to us about her newest 2019 CD called Thirsty Ghost, as she embraces the light and the dark on this sixth album. So she found her way into a recording contract right out of college in 2004, and it had a big management component and a booking agency as well. It also came with a lot of responsibility for a 20-year-old artist. And as the dust began to settle, she dug in and went headlong into her art. She's got a rich story and great reflections, so please get to know her and dig this interview, my friends.
Sarah, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I want to talk to you a little bit about Thirsty Ghost, and this is your sixth album, and I want to know what the artistic vision for this project was.
You know, honestly, this is the first record that I've ever made where there wasn't an artistic vision established before the music started to come to life. Essentially, 4 years ago, I sort of had this revelation that the music that I was performing and singing didn't actually reflect the experiences that I was going through in my life. And so I just started seeking songs and material to reflect really specific experiences. And I started collaborating with different people, and more than anything was just looking for more authentic sounds and repertoire to reflect what was happening. And then, you know, it just so happened that at the end of that 4-year period, much like anything in life, there's like a beginning, a middle, and an end to a story, and it just felt like we needed to record it.
How do you view each successive release? Is it kind of an imprint in time? Is it an evolution of your artistic vision? What do you see them as?
That's a great question. You know, I think that a lot of artists struggle with like looking back and reflecting back on their projects, and some might even admit that it's challenging to listen to, but I've always felt like projects are just a snapshot of hopefully the person that you are in that moment. And, you know, the first record that I made when I was 21 and then 23 and then 26, I think that those records were a snapshot of who I was and what I was capable of artistically at that time. I guess I would say that this is the first record that really truly has ever felt like an artistic statement, because in the past, a lot of the records that I've made have, you know, ultimately been records for the sake of records, that, you know, we wanted to put something out and love performing and love touring, and these songs are great and this band is great and we love to make music. But this was the first time that I really felt like there was something that needed to be expressed with this art form.
Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, and was lucky to experience a really wonderful pre-collegiate jazz education program that they have in the public school system up there. You know, went to a bunch of different festivals and different really wonderful education opportunities through the jazz band and the jazz choir there. And then moved down to Southern California in 2000 to get a degree in jazz studies from the University of Southern California. And that's where I've been ever since.
So growing up, what jazz musicians or what album really got you going and made you think this is what I want to do? This is something that makes sense to me.
You know, I think I came to jazz late in comparison to some of my friends. I was a sophomore in high school, and I had joined the jazz choir because I just wanted more opportunities for creative things. And the guy that I kind of previously mentioned that ran the jazz band and ran the jazz program that also directed the jazz choir. And so he had us listening to a bunch of different really important jazz records. So, you know, he had transcribing solos from Kind of Blue, and gave us all an assignment, like first day of class, to spend some time with that Ella and Basie record, Sunny Side of the Street. So I think that was the first record that I put on and just kind of had my mind blown that was what music could be, you know, that much joy and that much intensity and fun. And I spent a year listening to that record, like really, truly just, you know, not intentionally trying to transcribe anything, but just sort of by osmosis, memorizing every single lick and inflection, vocal quality, kind of all the little musical elements. And I joke that it's kind of like that Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten book, that everything I need to know I learned from Ella and Basie on the Sunny Side of the Street.
Yeah. I'm always reminded during interviews of why it's essential that jazz radio is around. I was one of those two that came to jazz late. I hear that a lot. I either hear that musicians have parents that baptize them in it, which I have. My son's name is Miles, so he had no choice from birth. I've been very steadfast in my life because I've loved it, but I came to it late in life. So anyway, that was just an epiphany. I'm always surprised. There's always two answers that are very synonymous with jazz singers and musicians, and it's jazz represents freedom, or they came to jazz later in life. Like they were baptized in all these different genres of music, but jazz was always late. So it's interesting. So I'm always reminded that radio is probably pretty good for people to have out there, so that maybe they have a fighting chance before the age of 20. So,
absolutely.
So you came out of the gates running pretty hard and got a recording contract back in 2004, and a big management and big booking agency. Talk to me about how those bright lights happened in the beginning.
I came up at an odd time. It was sort of like the tail end of those golden years of record companies, and it was just as iTunes was making its way into the world, and people were still buying records, and there still was quite a bit of money to be spent on records. People were willing to take chances on artists across the board. Booking agents and jazz clubs and managers and record labels were willing to let themselves just kind of be excited by what they were experiencing instead of the tides of the industry. And I just happened to apply for an award, a student music award through Downbeat Magazine, and there was a big management company that was looking for a young artist to participate in a jazz festival tour. And they happened to open up the magazine and saw my name and checked me out and invited me to join Karin Allison and Diane Shore and Alita Adams on this Concord Jazz Festival tour. And that was really where I learned sort of like the integral but supplemental parts of the music education that I was receiving at USC. I ultimately learned, all of the performative and business aspects my senior year of college. And it was through that tour that I ended up landing with a pretty major booking agency and got a recording contract. And it was an odd trajectory, I would say. Not unlike some of the singers who win, the Sarah Vaughan competition or the Monk competition that are kind of thrust into a recording contract. So, I see like the Jazz Neilhorns of the world or the Veronica Swifts of the world, and I think like, yes, you're where I was a couple of years ago. And I think it's beautiful that there's still an opportunity for artists to have that experience. And I think that the beauty of it, is the visibility that it brings. And I think that the artists who continue to stretch themselves and to grow and learn and try new things and challenge themselves to continue to strive to develop the tools for that freedom and that authenticity that you previously mentioned. I think that, it's, an early and sudden and big leap into the music world isn't necessarily a curse. Sometimes it's a blessing if you're willing to continue to push and grow.
So are you comfortable on stage? Really comfortable? Do you ever get nervous? Is it kind of a second home to you?
It just depends. There are times when I'm nervous. I would say for the most part, I'm not, because I have musicians that I work with that I love, and the music that I perform is music that's very near and dear to my heart. But every once in a while, if it's like a really big stage, and I don't know anybody in the audience, like sometimes jazz festivals can be a little scary because people just go. They're not there necessarily to see a particular artist, or if they are, you might not be the artist that they've come to see. And so those can be a little scary because you kind of have to like bring people on board. But sometimes those are invigorating, because it's like meeting new people and, first impressions are important. So it pushes you to deliver the best performance possible.
What was one of the first jazz shows that you saw live that really rocked your foundation?
I remember going to the Reno Jazz Festival and seeing the Ray Brown Trio live, and I remember seeing Diana Krall, and I remember seeing Diane Reeves. I think that was the lineup that year. And I remember thinking that it was so beautiful that somebody like Diana Krall could move me so deeply, but then on the other side of the coin, somebody like Diane Reeves could move me so deeply. And just kind of realizing that that spectrum was so wide, you know, that there was a place for the Diana Kralls and the Diane Reeves of the world. And it wasn't like this singular persona that people were looking for. I think it was then, I would guess, that I realized that, you know, it's less about the idea of a person and more about that sincerity and that artistic expression that the people in this genre, at least, are looking for.
So why do you love jazz?
I mean, I think it ties back to kind of what we were just talking about, you know, that it's not performative. You know, like I always, when I was younger, was involved in theater and, you know, loved watching old music videos of Madonna, but it was so strange to have such a disconnect between the person and the art. You know, that like Madonna's not a person. You know, Madonna's like a mythical being. But the same thing would go with like Holly Golightly. You know, like that's not a person, that's a character. And the thing that I love about jazz is that the audience wants the human. They want the human experience. They want to see themselves reflected in this music instead of be tricked into forgetting about the human experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah. So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has a version of you or interpretation of who they think you are. Your family, your friends, your fans, but you know who you are. Tell me, who do you think you are?
Oh, my goodness. So what a question.
That's right.
Who do I think I am? I don't know. You know, I was kind of baffled when you said you know who you are. I mean, I think it's always changing. I think that I am a really strong-willed and creative and sensitive person who likes to laugh, but has now moved into a place where I just want the truth. I think there was a period when I was younger where the truth was scary, and now is the time when why and what are my two favorite questions.
Right on. That's great. That's a great way to wrap everything up. Sara, thank you for taking a minute out to talk about Thirsty Ghost, your career in music, and good luck with everything.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest singers in Seattle, Los Angeles, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Sara for her time and her music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.